Because after all, the scale is different, but we follow the same farming model. Then why is it that the American farmer does well, the Indian farmer does not, do equally well? That is why the WTO agreement, the argument comes in that in a globalized world, if an Indian farmer has to be making his money or making himself becoming competitive or economically viable, then he has to be globally competitive, means reaching the same productivity standards as in America. I think this was completely wrong. Again, our economists gave it wrong to us. Wherever I go in a conference, I find agricultural scientists nodding their head when they are told that there is no way out than to raise productivity. Now let us look at the American productivity for instance. In America today, there are only 7 lakh farmers left, which is less than 1% of the population of America. America's population is about 320 million. In India, we have 320 million people who go to bed hungry. In America, we have 320 million people, total population. Now only less than 1% population is involved in agriculture. Let's make a comparison with paddy, because paddy is your crop in West Bengal. Paddy is also a crop in America, not the major crop. The total output of paddy in America is worth $1.2 billion. Total output, $1.2 billion. Average productivity, 7 tons per hectare. In India, largest area in the world under paddy is in India. The average productivity is 3 tons per hectare. So obviously every scientist would say that is why farmers commit suicide. Unless he can raise his productivity level to 7 tons, he cannot survive. That's the argument you find everywhere. And I think agriculture scientists and economists are again wrong. The American farmer, he produces a crop of $1.2 billion. With 7 tons per hectare, he should be economically viable. Am I right? According to the argument that we have, he should be economically viable. But he can't survive unless the government gives him a corresponding subsidy. And what is the subsidy he gets? He gets a subsidy of $1.4 billion a year to produce a crop of $1.2 billion. Now, if Indian farmers were to raise their productivity from 3 tons to 7 tons, can government of India provide him the matching subsidy? In America, the rice farmer is alive today not because he is efficient, quote unquote, but he is alive because he gets direct income support from the state. In India, we have followed half the model. We have brought fertilizer, pesticides, machinery and so on, but we haven't given him the economic part of that model also. We are very clever economists. We justify our own salaries only. We don't justify the salaries of the poor farmer. We've done it over the years. And I think to me, it's also a part of the crime. We deliberately kept it low. Now look at cotton for instance. We know of cotton farmers dying in India. We know that 70% of those farmer suicides are now, since 1995, 2.7 lakh farmers have died till date in India. These are the farmers out of which 70% are cotton growers. And we are told cotton is a cash crop. We brought in BT cotton with this assumption. Again, scientists and economists got together to mislead the country that the productivity goes up. Let me tell you, the BT cotton, BT gene does not increase productivity. BT gene does exactly what the chemical pesticides do. They reduce crop losses. If BT gene can increase productivity, pesticides too should be classified to have increased productivity. No scientist will ever accept that chemical pesticides increase productivity. They always reduce crop losses. But in this case of genetic engineering, we actually accepted because the industry wanted us to accept that BT would increase productivity. To mislead the people that it increases your productivity, actually it reduces crop losses. There's a difference between crop losses, reducing crop losses and increasing productivity. I think all of you know as scientists. But we did it. We did it and we said that average, I remember at that particular time when we opposed BT cotton India got 1 year extension forcing Monsanto and Myco to go in for 1 year more of trial. I was in that committee when we worked it out that all data that the Monsanto company had given us was actually not correct. And that is why we went in for 1 year more of trials. Nevertheless, that time the DBT had said that 10,000 rupees per acre is the economic gain that will come about. And nobody ever talked about that from BT cotton, the water requirement will also go up by 20% or so. Nobody ever talked about that. And when I first talked about water requirement of BT going up, one scientist asked me a question, you must be foolish, he said. water requirement should come down. That was the argument. But now I am so glad it has been established that in the rain-fed areas, BT cotton was a mistake because the water requirement was more. So scientists now accept that the water requirement of BT goes up more than the hybrids in which the gene has been inserted. We were told that the productivity will go up, as a result of which the income will go up. Now, if that income had gone up all these years, I would have expected farmers to have less suicides happening in this country. But they forget about the debate whether the suicides happened because of BT cotton or not. But the fact of the matter is, cotton was not a savior in India. Now let's look at what happens in America. In America, there are 20,000 cotton growers. In India, again, we have the largest area under cotton. In America, whatever be the yield, I think one of the highest yields exists in America. The American farmers in 2005, when I published this data, the American farmers produced a crop which was worth $3.9 billion. Total cotton, $3.9 billion. And how much did the subsidy the cotton farmers got? In 2005, they got a subsidy of $4.7 billion to produce a crop of $3.9 billion. And when eventually Brazil took them to dispute panel in WTO, challenging the subsidies that America gives for cotton, and America lost the case. America lost the case, so they thought the best way, instead of attracting more duties from Brazil as a countervailing part, they could have done it. So America bribed the cotton farmers in Brazil. America now provides, in addition to the subsidies they provide to cotton farmers in America, they also provide $147 million of subsidies to cotton farmers in Brazil. So your mouth is shut. What a clever way. And then we are told Indian farmer is inefficient and he doesn't know how to farm. The African farmer is inefficient, he doesn't know how to farm. If he were to raise his productivity, he would match the American standards and therefore he will be globally competitive. The assumption that we need to understand is, this is a model where lot depends upon how you perceive, how you understand as to what is being told to you, how you decipher the realities out of what is presented before you. Now, if you see the global model, look at the very clever way. I told you that they bribe $147 million subsidy to providing Brazilian cotton farmers with subsidy. They also ensure that to their own textile industry, they provide a subsidy of $180 million to keep the prices low. As a result of which the prices of the yarn fall in America, the prices of the yarn in India, we are priced out. We look to be very inefficient, the industry as well as the farmers. Now look at the cotton farmers the other way also. Over the years, if you have ever carefully studied the CACP report, the problem with most of us is we don't read. We don't even read the newspapers. So I can't expect anyone to do that, but CACP reports, Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, if you were to read those reports carefully, Kharif and Rabi reports, in fact in one report it was mentioned 10 years back, the report said that we have deliberately paid cotton farmers 20% less to keep the industry afloat. Which means Indian cotton farmers are actually subsidizing the textile industry, the Reliance and the other companies in India all these years so that they can be globally competitive. 20% the farmers were paid less according to CACP. The pattern continues. And when the term came PPP, public-private partnership, I thought the best and the classical way of looking at PPP is what happened to the case of cotton farmers. These farmers who has kept the industry afloat all these years, and when the cotton farmers started committing suicide, I thought the industry should stand up to bail out those farmers. But industry didn't do it. Industry said we will import cotton from outside rather than to buy a price which at a higher price, because 2 years back the price was raised to 4,000 rupees. So they said we will not buy it from India, we will buy it from outside. This is exactly what is PPP. As long as the private sector is subsidized, it is PPP. But when they have to shell out something, they will never stand up to that. And I can give you a number of examples on that, but that's a different issue.